will be your moderator today. Okay, so Ms. Amy Bohman, okay, she is a former U.S. English language fellow in Cambodia, and she is going to present about creating exam in Google Classroom. So now, Amy, your stage is yours.
All right, thank you so much for joining us all today. This is a great opportunity to work with everyone and hopefully share some knowledge. I'm going to begin by just sharing my slideshow presentation so that you will be able to kind of follow along. I think that would be the best for this. Hold on 1 second here.
Yes, Amy, can you share your screen?
Sure, hold on 1 second.
Okay, okay.
There we go. Thanks for being patient. All right. So what we're going to be covering today is talking about creating exams in Google Classroom. And if you want to ask some questions, if you could wait till the end, because then I will have some more time to kind of go over that with you. But this is a very brief presentation today, and I wanted to kind of cover this because some people have had a lot of questions on how to do this. So the first thing is with COVID-19, many teachers have had to adapt and teach lessons online. So some content, maybe even videoing yourself as a teacher, can be easier to share with your students using Zoom or maybe even on Google Classroom, but assessment might be hard. So how would we be able to do that? So we're going to focus on discussing how to set up assessments and exams and mark them using Google Classroom, because I know many people are using Google Classroom because it's a free tool. So the first thing we have to talk about are what are the types of assessment. The two types are formative and summative. So you need to decide what type of assessment you are going to make right away. Now in Cambodia, a lot of teachers mostly focus on summative assessment, but we need to make sure, especially with online learning, that we include formative as well. So we'll talk about the definitions really quickly for that. So formative is really to monitor student learning and provide feedback right away to make sure students understand concepts instead of just waiting to the end and giving that one big exam. So it also tells us what students can do, what students can't do, maybe decide on how we want to make some assignments for students. So a formative assessment would be a short quiz. It could be a written response, maybe a survey or an exit slip, or a short writing. That way we can check just to make sure students are doing something. The next is summative, and so most teachers in Cambodia are familiar with this type of assessment. We do some sort of midterm or final, a project, a paper, or a presentation. And this might be for the midterm or at the end of a unit. So one of the things we want to keep in mind, which I've noticed also, is that with summative assessment, what is the point of mastering those skills? So we want to make sure we're asking questions that are bigger at the end of a unit. What do we expect students to master? What are their strengths and weaknesses? Instead of focusing maybe just on some basic answers, we want to look for bigger concepts at the end of those assignments. So now, once you've decided what kind of assessment you are going to create, you can begin by making that assessment. So I'm going to show you how we can do this in Google Classroom. And the first you would look to get to Google Classroom, you could go to the icon Then you're going to choose a class you want to make an exam or quiz for. And then you're going to go to that class and find that classwork at the top of the page. Then you can start. So that's kind of the theory behind why we do this type of assessment. And then we're going to share how we can do this with our classes now. So here's an example of some of the classes that I was working with and some of the teachers that I worked with last year, or actually still part of this year. And we're going to take a look at one of the classes that I have been working with a teacher, and it's not final. We're always updating our classes, but we're going to take a look at our cultural studies class and what we were doing with that. So in our cultural studies class, this will appear right here, I selected over here in the settings to only show announcements from the teacher, on the screen. So on the screen down below, you'll only see announcements. Then we'd have to go under classwork to see what things that we're offering in our class, what things are due, what things are available for students to be working on. So I would set my class up, and with my colleague, we would have an introduction to the course. And then we would divide the chapters, the text that we were using, into different sections. And so at the end of each section, a great way to assess student learning would be formative assessment. But not always did we have time or create this type of formative assessment. As you can see down below, we created what would be a summative assessment. So we did a presentation at the end of this first unit. With that assessment, we can also create a rubric. And there's a rubric function right on the Google Classroom you can add and make for your students. Okay, and it would look something like this, and you could type in the aspects that you'd like to grade students on. The nice thing about doing these types of things, you can mark them right on the screen and it would go back into a student grade book. So that's a nice option for you. Taking a look at some other topics we would cover, we can see that looking under societies and groups, 2 sections down after we would share our materials, we offered a question. This question is a formative assessment. So this is just a short response that we're asking back from students. So here when students would turn it in, here's their short response, and we could give them some points when they would complete that right online. Okay. Going further, you can see under social behavior, here again, we have another group presentation. This would be a summative assignment again. And now we're going to take a look at the next topic, which is women's issues, because we're going to take you through that process of how can we create a formative assessment and a summative assessment? How can we make those using Google Classroom? So under create, under this same topic of classword, you can see this is where maybe we would attach an assignment, we would see a question, we would attach a material, but we're going to do this second one. It says quiz assignment. And this actually takes you to Google Forms where you can create this quiz or exam. So I like to think of formative assessment as a quiz, and summative assessment is an exam that we're doing. So for our formative assessment, we can create a title for it. We can choose instructions.
Excuse me, Amy.
Yep.
I saw some little feedback that from participants, they want to have a bigger font size. I don't know if you can zoom that in a little bit so they can see better. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks.
I'm not sure if I'm able to, or if that's a little bit better or not, but it won't be able to show this first screen. But the idea is so you kind of know what you can do, and you can watch this later too.
Okay.
Because on your own screen, you can see it a little bit more clearly.
I can see better now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'm glad that helped.
Thank you.
So on the other side, you can see that there are, that's not going to help anyone. You can see where we can add that title, and we can add those other things down below. So let me go back here. So you can see that quizzes on the top. We can add that. You can choose your point value, and you can choose a due date. Now, one of the things that I like to do when I'm creating this type of assignment is maybe I'm not going to assign it right away. So don't put in the due date and don't put in those other options, because you maybe just want to start it and then have it on your site. So when you're offering that quiz for a student, you can add it on that day. Okay. So this is what a blank quiz would look like. And we could add those questions in. On the opposite side, we would have those things we can add in. So the top one covers like a question. I apologize now to increase my screen. I can't really go over there with my pointer, but the top one adds one. The second one down below would add in other information. Going to the next one, we could add some other features, what the title would be, and a picture, a video, and something else. So that's kind of how you could add those things in. On the other aspect, you can choose what type of quiz you would like to have. If you'd like a multiple choice. And I suggest if you are doing a quiz for 10 points, you want to do multiple choice, because you can actually have those questions graded as well at the same time. Okay. So those would be some questions you can answer. Now you can always go to the bottom corner, and there's a little pencil. You can click on that and edit that if you ever want to go back and look things over. And you want to keep in mind when we're setting up and asking these types of questions, are they important questions you should know from your reading? Are they the important questions that you're talking about in this section? That's really important for formative assessment or a quiz. You don't want to have them from the culture unit if you're talking about women's issues. So make sure it's just on that section. All right. So once you complete this, you can go to the responses section on the top and be able to see the responses for students that participated. So here I can get the data from that, from seeing who responded. And it would be automatically corrected and put in their grade book. So this is, as I said, again, only with multiple choice. If you make them short answer, you have to go in and correct them yourself. All right. Now this is kind of quick on summative assessment, because I think we're running out of time maybe already. I'm not sure how we're doing on the time. Summative assessment kind of focuses on the bigger picture. So we would take things from the different units together in creating questions. So in this case, if it's my midterm, I might have to correct all of these on my own. I might have to go back and check the responses, because I'm looking for more knowledge and they understand the topics. So the first thing, once again, I could add that question, and I would select, as I said, maybe a paragraph response instead of just the multiple choice. You can also, down below here, it shows some of that title and description, just like the same as the other, because they're basically using the same form. You're just entitling them different or asking the students to do something different. You can add images. So here I could add an image and have the students write a response to that image. I can also link a video and have them watch a video about that. So one great way is if you're doing listening and speaking skills in an English class, this might be a great way to assess how a student is doing on those skills by including something like that in your test or exam. The last part is a section down below. So if you wanted to add another section, maybe you wanted most of your test to be paragraphs. Maybe you want a short answer section. Maybe you want a true false section, or maybe you'd like multiple choice. You can also do that here. Okay. So that would be sort of a different way we're setting up, because we're looking for those bigger things than just a quiz. That would be a short assignment based on just one section. So here again, I just wanted to show you, I've created or started working on an exam, and I started working on my Women's Issues quiz, but they won't show up to my class until I assign those. So I just have drafts in progress. Now, why would I want to do that? Number one, I don't want my students to go ahead and cheat, right? So how can we keep them honest and not cheating? One of the best ways to do that is once you finish your assignment, you give them a certain amount of time to complete that. One of the things we keep in mind is that formative assessment, maybe we're not as so worried about whether they're cheating to complete it. I think sometimes Cambodian teachers really think that, oh, my students are cheating on everything, and that's the most important thing of taking the test. In formative assessment, especially online, because we can't watch and see what students are doing, I think it's good to set up a time limit and then have them complete that within the time limit. The same would be for an exam. I know many schools are worried and they want traditional exams where you come in and do the exam at school. Some schools might not be as making sure that requirement takes place. Some might be a little bit understanding. Maybe the midterm could be an exam online. So same thing again, I would also limit that time again for students to complete it. You can be creative. Maybe you have them come to a place, but they still could take it online. That's another option to make sure they're not copying or looking at other people's work. So the idea kind of there is if you have less time to complete it, then you'll have less time to cheat on that. The students will have to know the answers to especially write it in their own way. All right, so this is just kind of a basic introduction to how to set up these formative and summative assignments. And then please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Sometimes it's hard to know what people have questions with, and I will share this presentation as well. So if you would like this presentation to look through at another time, you're more than welcome to. Along with this, there are a lot of demonstrations that I've found besides my own demonstration of how to use Google quizzes online. And maybe they can also answer some of the questions you're looking for or approach it in a different way. Okay. Now, as I said, I know it's really fast going through all of this, and I'm just going to switch back. I'm going to exit my presentation. So if some question you might have in regards to this, and maybe I can take a look at the chat now to see if I can answer some of those questions.
I see one question over there. Oh, Vantha is back, so Vantha can help with that too, please.
Okay, thank you, Amy, for incredible and useful presentation. presentations. So now welcome for the questioning sessions. We got a question from teacher Kumson. Okay, can the student access to their homework or exam with their Facebook without email address? If so, how? Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things with using this, Google Classroom is free. And so when we try to teach teachers how to use these things, we kind of want to switch students over. So we have to say, follow this link to my Google Classroom and have your students join that. Facebook is a social media platform, so it won't work as well for this type of assessment. Google Classroom is a free online tool that you can use to set these up, these activities up online. So you really can't do it through Facebook. You really have to use Google Classroom to be able to share that with your students. And then part of the activity is having them get a Gmail account so that you can use your class.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, hope the answer can reach to teacher. So the other question from teacher Nom. Okay, how do you train your student in terms of student with low technologies? Amy?
I found, because I was a little bit lucky, because I was at like a teacher training center and four-year institutions in Cambodia. So the students were older and a little bit more used to using the technology. To be honest, it's going to be hard for younger grades to get used to it at first. But once you take them through the steps and show them, it's a little bit easier. So there are, what I would suggest is there's some online videos on how to start Google Classroom. You can share those with your students through Facebook and they can learn that and then start them that way. It's a great way to share those videos and then get them thinking about it and how to use it.
Ami, one of our participants want to share their points. Chovy, please raise up.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah, I use the Google form without using the email. Usually, use the kids. So just send the link. They can click on it and can do it and submit to me. So I can share you screen quickly, maybe 2 minutes, I think. And if you have Class Dojo, that's easy for you. Just drop the link, then you can click. Can I share the screen a little bit? Just 2 minutes. Is it okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, I didn't hear the last question.
Can I share the screen a little bit for 2 minutes?
He want to share the screen.
Yeah, Google Form.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, share the
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, you see my screen?
Yes.
For example, this is VL8. For example, so click on the word send, and then you get the link here. Copy. Then I send it in the chat. So you can click on it. Sorry. We the chat. Now I put in the chat. Yeah. So
Now, do you also share that with your students on Facebook, or
Yeah.
do you make them use Google Classroom?
yeah, no need to go classroom. Also, you can click it on Telegram, whatever. Also, you can click it as well.
Yeah, so that is an option of using Google Forms, but the idea is, you know, if you use Google Classroom, you have all of your things together in one place. And that's what's nice about it. You can have your grade book, you can have your quizzes, you can have your information, and it's all linked. So,
sorry, teacher,
that I
Chovy.
would keep that in mind. Yeah.
Okay, because the main topic we are talking about Google Classroom and what you mentioned about Google Form. Okay, so it a bit different. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your sharing.
Google, just to clarify too, he's right. The Google Forms is part of the Google Classroom. So this is the debate in Cambodia all the time. How come we're not using Telegram? How come we use Facebook? How come we're using Google? Why aren't we using this? And I think it's really important as a teacher, make it easier on yourself. You know, if you choose Google Classroom, you can put it all there. It all works really nicely together, and it makes it easier for you instead of using like Telegram for this student and Google Classroom for this and this student Facebook. So I ran into that issue myself. So making students aware to use one thing for a class is a good thing. That's kind of the expectation in online education.
Thank you, Amit. Okay, if teacher you have any more questions, you can raise up. Okay, at the sign, teacher that I can
one
use you to
question
talk.
down at the bottom. You can have a time limit and you can assign the date and the time. So definitely you can do that. That is to limit students from cheating. So that's a very good question. It is possible when you're setting it up. In fact, that's why I didn't assign it to my students, so they couldn't see the test ahead of time too. Things will also get messaged to students that once they have an email account, it will send them a message, you have this assignment or you have this test you must complete. It will go directly to their email. So that's another nice function about Google Classroom. You don't have to do that yourself. It will do that automatically.
Okay, so I think because the time is up. Okay, so thank you so much, Amy, for your presentation, and thank you all teachers for joining this session. Okay, so I would like to inform you that we have the next session at 11:45. Is another presentation. So teacher Dara, we will join with this link, or we would have the link, another link.
So thank you so much, everybody, and mainly thank you to Amy for your precious time to be with us. I would like just to introduce for the next session, which is upcoming session at 11:45, and it's on the topic of Schoology for efficient, accurate assessment for large classes. So this is a recorded live session from Ms. Candace Renaud. So she's a former U.S. English language fellow in Indonesia. So at the 11:45, you will be able to see the recording that she has put it for us. And then you all will have your own lunch break at 12 o'clock. The upcoming session will begin again from 2 to 2:30 by other speakers and follow with the timelines that mentioned on the schedule. Okay, so please remember every session has a separate link, and those sessions that remain for the rest of today don't need any password. Okay, thank you all. That's it. So again, enjoy your next session at 11:45 on Schoology Technique. And then I'll see you all again at 2 o'clock with face-to-face live session. Enjoy your session and enjoy your lunch, all teachers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Very quick.